The score is 1-1 and Koneru Humpy has a stiff challenge in front of her. She has the black pieces, 4 minutes on the clock. Her opponent Bibisara has 5 minutes and she is the current world blitz champion. She's just 19 years old and phenomenal at blitz chess. But for Humpy, a draw will do. And we are off. Bibisara opens the game with c4 and Humpy goes for the very solid play in the center with e6 d5. She captures the pawn on c4. Knight f3. This is like the Catalan but without the pawn on d4. A check. Knight blocks it and the queen takes the pawn. Humpy now plays a6. Her idea is to expand on the queen side with b5. Bibisara stops it. You can still play b5 because after take, the queen is attacked and the rook is hanging. But Humpy is taking her time. She is now down to 3 minutes 40 seconds. She has to take care of her time. Bibisara has 4 minutes 47 seconds here. What does Humpy respond with? Well, I'm sure she's tempted with b5, but instead decides to be solid with c5 here. And this gives white a pleasant position now. Bibisara can move her queen away so that next move b5 doesn't come with a tempo. And she does that. She goes queen b3, a very smart move. And now the pawn cannot advance easily. And so Humpy now has to figure out how to activate her bishop on c8. But first she gets her bishop out. Bibisara castles very quickly. And for the time being, rook b8 played. And now b5 is on the cards. So she plays a5. Nice move, because if you play b5, there is a takes b6. Black quickly castles it out now. And Bibisara goes d3. A nice little move, opening up her bishop and also bringing the knight into play. Humpy anyway goes b5. And I think white must take. She takes. Knight takes on b6. And now there could be some discovered attacks on the queen. So that's the reason why white puts her queen back on d1. Humpy pushes her pawn forward. That is an isolated pawn. Black does have 2 isolated pawns and Humpy wants to get rid of one of them. And if Bibisara does take here, then knight takes c4 should give black a fine position. But she goes d4 and that is a good move now. Knight d5 plays the knight to the center. Rook e1 with the idea of e4 would be a very nice point here. And Bibisara has 4 minutes on the clock while Humpy is down to 2 minutes 48 seconds. Remember, there's no increment and in the end it'll get very, very nasty this time. Knight to c3 played, attacking the knight in the center. And now Humpy plays her bishop to b7 so that e4 is impossible. You just take the knight and the pawn on e4 falls. So bishop comes out to d2. White is banking on her superior structure to give her an advantage. Humpy chops off the knight. Now you can take back with the pawn or with the bishop. It makes sense to take with the bishop because the bishop remains active. Bibisara just does that. Later on the bishop can jump to a5. Knight jumps into e4 and she does play bishop a5. Queen e7 played. And how do you dislodge this knight from e4? Not so easy. Queen c2 played. But Humpy has firm control in the center. She brings her other rook into the game. Now the pawn is well protected. Next move, she can get her bishop to d5. And then there's a lot of pressure on the b2 pawn. Rook comes up to a4, attacking the pawn on c4. And Humpy quickly defends it with bishop d5. For the time being, the position is equal. Time-wise also, Humpy is doing pretty well. But the rook comes to a1. And now the queen moves into b7. You can see that she's attacking the b2 pawn. And Bibisara can actually move her bishop back, defend the pawn and unleash an attack on the a6 pawn. That's what she should do. She does that. She plays bishop c3 and now Humpy has to defend this pawn. Should she go rook a8? That keeps this diagonal open. Or should she go rook c6? But then the rook is somehow in between the queen and the bishop. She plays rook c6. And now white has a very good move with knight e5. And the point is, if you take bishop e5, I take on e4, attack here and also attack your bishop. And this is what Bibisara must calculate. She has 2 minutes 45 seconds to work this out. What will she do? Instead, she goes back with her rook to a2. And now Humpy quickly gets rid of her back rank weaknesses. She plays h6. She is doing pretty well. She has 2 minutes 8 seconds and the time difference of 1 minute has now reduced to 20 seconds, which is actually fantastic for Humpy. How does Bibisara continue? She goes knight e1 and she does put a lot of pressure on the e4 knight. Humpy removes her rook from this diagonal and now bishop takes, and now One thing that is working in Bibisara's favor is that her queen on c3, her bishop on c3 is firmly defending this pawn. Humpy goes bishop b4. She's like, I'm going to trade off that bishop. The bishop is kicked away. Bishop c6. And now, do you want to expand further with e4? Well, she brings her king to f2. And this king is not really safe here on the f2 square. How can Humpy create play on the king side? Is it possible she goes a5 and puts her knight there? Bibisara quickly brings her knight to c2, putting pressure on the bishop, and Humpy goes f5. Now this is not a good idea, because now after takes and rook a7, there's a lot of pressure here on b7, on g7, but instead she goes knight e3 and the bishop moves to d5. Black once again is doing fine. 1 minute 46 seconds for Bibisara, and Humpy has 1 minute 37 seconds. And now the time is almost equal. And Black still has the draw odds, which really brings this game in her favor. But also Bibisara is fantastic with handling of the clock. So when it comes down to bullet, she would naturally have an edge over Humpy. But now she's thinking a lot. She's down to 1 minute 24 seconds. She takes the bishop, and Humpy goes in with the rook. She's like, if you take here on a5, I'll take the pawn on b2. And so the knight comes back to d1, attacking this pawn, defending this pawn. Queen b6, attacking d4, and now queen d2. The pawn is still hanging on a5. Humpy has to figure out what to do. She can go rook a8 and defend it. It's slightly passive, but she may have to do it. She plays rook a8. White wants to play in the center with e4, but it's not so easy to get that move. And that's the reason why the knight jumps to c3. Fantastic move. And now e4 is on the cards. Also, at some point, you want to take this bishop off. And Humpy is now plays her king to h7. She has 1 minute 7 seconds. And can Bibisara simply push her pawn in the center? Pawn to e4. She's taking her time. No, she goes knight a4, and she's actually looking at this very nice square for her knight. Queen goes to c6, and now knight comes back to c3. Rook to b8, putting pressure, but now the queen can enter in the dark squares, and that is what could give white an advantage. But Bibisara down to 50 seconds. She needs to move. She's actually not able to play this like a bullet or an Armageddon game. She's taking a lot of time. Queen e3, giving up the rook. Rook takes a5. White is playing really well now. The d5 bishop is under pressure. Humpy goes rook b3. Rook goes to a7. And now rook b7 played. Attacks the queen. And they are repeating. But Humpy is okay with the draw. Bibisara is not okay with the draw. She needs to change the move. She can't repeat. And so she goes back rook a5. And puts pressure on the d5 pawn. Rook b7 played. But somehow this pin is quite irritating. Humpy has 41 seconds. Bibisara has 26. Queen goes to d6. And now what's next? She goes rook c1. White is playing pretty well. She's better, but the clock is what is going to decide the game. Queen goes back to d2 and pawn to f4. Pawn goes up to g4. And Humpy brings her rook back to b7. Knight a4. Rook b4 attacking the knight. Rook defends it. And now queen goes back attacking the knight. Rook a6 played. And knight defends it. Queen d1 played here. She could have taken the pawn on f4. But now Humpy has 18 seconds. Rook a1. Pawn to c3. And now bishop c4. e2 pawn is hanging. Oh my god. Queen f4. 12 seconds for Humpy. 10 for Bibisara. Rook c1. Rook to b1. She takes the rook. And both players down to 8 seconds. She brings the queen in. Humpy playing super quick. Both down to 6 seconds. Oh, discovered check. Loses the queen. Brings the king up, and it's checkmate. Oh my goodness. What a mate on the board. Humpy keeping her nerves and managing to pull through. Unbelievable chess there. In the end, she checkmated her opponent with just 3 seconds on the clock. Wow, that was insane chess by Koneru Humpy, and a great fight by Bibisara Assaubayeva.